Conor McGregor and Sean Strickland are two broken people. The only difference is that one guy is allowing it to work for him in the current moment of time, and the other guy is being destroyed by his inner demons. And I'm going to explain the two dynamics of this reality. So, Sean Strickland, in the current moment of time, he seems to be growing a huge popularity. And in fact, even in this page, in this particular channel, he's given me quite some good views covering his Israel Adesanya fight and the aftermath of fans around the world rejoicing in his rocky moment. So he allowed his whole entire demons and his whole entire childhood trauma to help him persevere, to help him constantly get in these gym wars, which, by the way, had been absolutely conducive to his improvement as a fighter, him understanding his range, understanding the distance, understanding what it feels like to be in mid-competition. And that's an important factor, too, when we're talking about ring rust and experience, and also talking about being active as a fighter. Now, you look at Conor McGregor. There's a huge problem with the fact that he's not active because of the fact that, as I've told you in previous videos, is that it really takes a lot to get him to fight. And not just him as a person, because here's the thing. He has gotten to a point right now in superstardom in which that going into a fight is just not enough, right? There has to be sponsors involved. Then there's Proper 12. How is that going to fit into the equation? The UFC and the various companies and corporate conglomerates that are surrounding it. Should they have an event near WrestleMania? Because as you know, they are now owned by the WWE and they have a partnership to which they can't cross paths with each other in a way that is going to interfere or step over the line over each other or impose their brands in a very inconducive way. So there's just that problem alone. And then there's the problem of, obviously, USADA and the transition between the drug testing companies they have going on. And then you also have to factor in the aspect of the fact that, well, he has to get ready from these inner demons that he's, quite frankly, not taken care of. And what do I mean by that? You see him, he's constantly drinking, he's going into these boxing fights absolutely snowed out of his mind, if you know what I mean. And then take into consideration the fact that he's not living every day like a mixed martial arts fighter should. Now, you look at this meme that I had in my Facebook where I basically had a comparison between Conor McGregor's lifestyle and Michael Chandler's lifestyle. You look at Michael Chandler on this side, he wakes up at 6 a.m., gets his first workout at this time. Conor McGregor's something where he drinks Proper 12, tweets, trains a little bit, drinks Proper 12, sleep, and then here comes Michael Chandler down the list of the time scheduled during the 24-hour span. It's either training or eating nutritious food, recovering, and then sleeping to help somewhat of a trajectory of being in a training camp or at least staying in shape all year round. And you compare those two, and now they're going to this clash in June 29th. It's like, who do you favor? Because here's the thing that I think is really important to understand, right? Tracy MMA on YouTube mentioned that Conor McGregor is never going to beat a top 15 guy. I said, wow, that's shocking. Why would he never beat a top 15 guy? Well, because of the fact that he's not living the lifestyle to be able to perform at that kind of level, even in a smaller, minuscule level that he's used to, because obviously he's a double champ. He's been in the top pound-for-pound rankings when he was a champion, and even after he was a champion, even after his Khabib loss. So how about that? After the Khabib loss, what did we start thinking about this guy? We started thinking that There's nobody else that can really beat this guy other than Khabib. It seems that Khabib and maybe his other teammates or people that have that particular style are the only ones that have the particular skill set to beat this guy. Lo and behold, they go and rematch Dustin Poirier after the Donald Cerrone win. What happens? It seems that the activity level of Dustin Poirier was the reason of his advantage into the Conor McGregor rematch, the second time around when they fought in Abu Dhabi in 2021. And then fast forward into that rematch in that very same year, Conor McGregor loses again. But again, he made a great account of himself, because you look at the spinning attack kicks that he was throwing at Dustin Poirier, it was presenting a huge levels of threat that could look like Conor McGregor would somehow pull it off if the rounds kept going on. That was until he kept taking leg kicks, which, by the way, ended the way that it did. And historically, now we understand the results of that and the effects of those calf kicks that ultimately debilitated Conor McGregor in that fight and ultimately put him out for some time, where he had to take enhancement drugs in order to get the recovery, which, by the way, was the problem in and of itself during the final months of the USADA era, in which he had to basically present a clean piss test for a 6-month time frame of some sort, right? So now we're in this situation where you really can't believe that he can beat anybody in the top 15. And I'm starting to believe Lucas Tracy MMA, Tracy Lucas MMA, or Lucas Tracy, whichever, right? You guys know who he is, especially if you're in the YouTube combat sports MMA cycle of things, right? I believe him. I absolutely believe him, because at first, when you thought that nobody could beat him other than Khabib, here comes Dustin Poirier. And then all of a sudden you realize that this guy can't beat anyone at all. He's just not living the lifestyle that is conducive to improving yourself as a fighter. Look at what Dustin Poirier had to go through prior to that. He went through Max Holloway, and then he went through that war with Dan Hooker. And believe it or not, it seems plausible that he can't even beat Dan Hooker as well. So in other words, what I'm really trying to say is that this is going to be a very deadly outcome for Conor McGregor. Maybe not in a physical sense, but in the sense of his career and where he's going to go from here. Because what Khabib had said a couple of years ago, he had predicted that Conor McGregor is just going to be exploited by the UFC. They're going to use him. They're going to put the younger guys that need some names, or somehow they need to build up. For example, don't be surprised if Conor McGregor ends his career with a Paddy Pimblett fight, in which, by the way, that Paddy Pimblett fight will come after, let's say, a string of losses. And maybe at that point, to the degree that maybe Paddy Pimblett has experienced his first UFC loss at that point as well. And now they just need this in order to build him back up in name value, not so much in rankings, because at this point, Conor is unranked. He was number 9 when he had left, which was shocking, knowing that he was the top pound-for-pound guy. On top of that, was a double champion in 2 weight classes. And yeah, obviously, but this is where he's at right now. He is on a decline, and not because of his age, because, by the way, age is not always the factor in combat sports, especially if you've lived a healthy lifestyle that is absolutely conducive to being a world-class level athlete. The problem is he's not doing that. So you can't expect him to not only beat the top 15, but also beat some of the top guys, which, by the way, Chandler is within that list. You look at all the people that Chandler has lost to, they all seem reasonable reasons to lose, especially within that level. But now we're talking about a level that has put him down a notch, away from the double champ era, away from the top 5 era. Now, even away from the top 10 era, as he had left number 9 in the 155 division. So again, it goes back to what Marvin Hagler said, right? It's hard to wake up and run, do your road work when you're waking up in silk sheets. Now, obviously, that's not true for everybody. You want to know who one of the richest guys is in the fight game right now, surprisingly, and nobody probably even knows. It's Khamzat Chimaev. You want to know why? Khamzat Chimaev is married to Ramzan Kadyrov's niece, which, by the way, that means they are literally the royal family of Chechnya, which makes him an oligarch through marriage. So guess what? The guy probably never needs to fight for the rest of his life, but you look at the way that that guy trains, the fact that he's still not a champion, by the way, because he's still an upcoming prospect, an upcoming contender. I'm talking about Khamzat Chimaev, but still has that certain hunger and drive to train in the insane matters that he does, and also to perform in the way that he does in the cage. Seems to just love to get in there and hurt people and collect his checks and bounce. But that's a different type of mentality. Floyd, you could say, is within that same mentality. I don't know what drives him. Maybe it's just the money. Maybe he uses the sense of vanity and narcissism to propel him. Which, by the way, this is what I said in the beginning, is that Sean Strickland and Conor McGregor are in two trajectories of a deadly path, and not only that, a very dangerous path for their mental health. However, one guy is using it to propel him into championship levels, and I'm talking about Sean Strickland, and the other guy, Conor McGregor, who's already been in the limelight, who's already had double championships, who's already been in that dance, just doesn't have that same motivation anymore, and now it's leading him to the wrong path. On top of that, yes, he still has the motivation to fight, but then it becomes deflated when you have all these situations going on of, let's say, well, you know what, we can't fight you just straight away because we have to talk to these sponsors, we have to talk to these different cities, these different venues. We want to make sure that the hotels that are involved in this particular fighting event is going to be part of it in terms of package deals. Because as you know, when there's a Conor McGregor fight in town, the Irish come show up, the whole entire national MMA fan base shows up. Basically, the whole entire casual space, sports fans, non-MMA people show up along with celebrities and actors, just like what you've seen in the Saudi boxing cards as of late. This is what you have to deal with a Conor McGregor fight. So it becomes harder for him to just develop these skills in a way that lesser known fighters such as Dustin Poirier or Jim Miller can obtain. They don't have the same pressure when they're fighting in the prelim cards. Meanwhile, you're Conor McGregor. Every fight is a headline, no matter what. Again, he could be on a 7-fight losing streak like Tony Ferguson and BJ Penn, but guess what? They're going to find a way to put him in a main event nonetheless. Now, with Sean Strickland, that's not the case. He knows that he doesn't have that type of following, even though nowadays there's a subculture of people that are following Sean Strickland based on the fact that he looks like the type of character that many of these degenerates can relate to. Let's just be honest about it. The guy is a degenerate through and through, but then tries to play off this wholesome character. And then on top of that, you also got to understand, right? Sean Strickland has this very diluted way of looking at masculinity, even though a lot of his supporters will say otherwise. What it is that you got to understand a lot of his actions and the way that he rebuttals things, the way that he downplays things is based on the fact that he grew up abused, he grew up hurt, and then on top of that, there's the old saying that goes, hurt people, hurt other people. And by the way, a lot of fighters, pro fighters who grew up in rough neighborhoods, guess what? Somewhere down the line, someone has hurt them. And again, it's not exclusive to a particular class or a particular set of people, but even in the suburbs, there's bullying that goes on. Either way, it drives you. When somebody tries to violate you, it drives you for better and for worse. Conor McGregor, the same thing. You will often hear him reference, yeah, all the tough guys that used to jump me or beat me up in the streets of Dublin, where are they now? Look at me, I'm the double champ. I have all this money, his house, his crib, and cars, and sponsorships, and all of that in between. So that's where he's at. But at the same time, it varies with different people and how they are driven by one particular situation to another. What drives Conor McGregor at this point right now is just vanity. It's also the same reason that's making him get up to fight. But there's a difference between being motivated to fight because you want to get on TV and you want to get on the cameras and you want that poster headline added to your collection in your gym or in your office, but rather There's a difference between that and then the difference between just genuinely wanting to hurt people. And I think Sean Strickland, for better or worse, is within this trajectory where he really does enjoy hurting people. He's just in here to just do it to hurt people. And how do I know this? He doesn't treat the belt with respect. Most guys that win the belt, they hold on to it like it's their baby, like it's their toy. And on top of that, you also got to understand that he's not in that same mindset. He doesn't care for it. All this is just nothing more than an imaginary trophy to him, and as it should. But at the same time, even though Sean Strickland has really made a positive light into his career and using his demons to propel him, he still has to face those demons even after he's done with fighting. And that's where it gets really scary. And with Conor McGregor, if he continues on this path where he's sub-motivated, he's not going to get the results that he wants. And that's just the reality of the fight game for everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe.